Hello everybody, I'm Chase.
And I'm Joby.
And this is the Overrun. Today on the Overrun, we're doing the bit, we're doing the meme, we're filming the Chevy Colorado in Colorado. So please sit back, enjoy the scenery, be glad you're not out here in 15-degree weather, and come with us on our review of the new Chevy Colorado in Colorado.
This is the 2023 Chevy Colorado TrailBoss, the four-wheel drive midsize truck that Chevy brings to the market that competes with the Toyota Tacoma, the Ford Ranger, and a bunch of other midsize trucks. Now, this one is just over $41,000 as spec. It's got some nice extra paint, some other convenience options, adaptive cruise control, a nice spray bed liner. But we're going to take you through all that in today's video and show you what makes this TrailBoss a TrailBoss.
Now, this is the 2.7-liter turbocharged V6 that powers the Chevy Colorado TrailBoss. It is a 310 horsepower and 395 pound-feet of torque power plant. That was a very weird way to phrase it, but we're going to power through it. It's also mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission with a true blue four-wheel drive system that has a number of selectable drive modes specific to the TrailBoss. It also has an auto-locking rear differential, and you can lock the front and center differentials as well on this model. It's among one of the more powerful engine options for this segment. Toyota, as we know, is significantly underpowered. Their power figures for their V6 start with a 2. Now, that said, you pay for that in fuel economy. This claims 19 miles per gallon combined. We've seen about 21 because we've been doing a lot of highway driving, but I have a feeling that as soon as we hit the trails here in a little bit, that number is going to drop precipitously.
Now, the Chevy Colorado TrailBoss also has some exterior changes that are not shared with the rest of the Colorado lineup. For one, we have upgraded 18-inch wheels and these Wrangler all-terrain tires, which obviously help for any off-road performance. We also have these little plastic fender things, fender flares, and there's also some little bit of like TrailBoss badging. This car is not overly badged. There's one badge on the front grille, and then there's a couple of stickers on the rear quarter panels. So overall, it has some upgrades, but doesn't look overly obnoxious with the TrailBoss badging.
So the bed length for the Colorado is 5 feet. Notably, the Toyota Tacoma also options a double cab 6-foot option. So if you need bed space, definitely keep that in mind. This does have a cool kind of party piece back here. It's got this little storage compartment. It has a 1/4-inch thread adapter in here. We're not really sure what that's for. If you know what it's for, let us know in the comments. It's definitely not for any drain of any kind, but I guess you could even stick our GoPro on there if you wanted to. Another thing to note is there is a ruler right here so that you can measure things if you need to. And there's also a spray and bed liner with some nice attachment points scattered throughout the bed. So let's talk competition. Obviously, in the off-roady-ish mid-sized truck segment, there is a ton of it. I've got it all right here because there's so much to memorize, so you'll have to forgive me using the cheat sheet. We'll start with the Ford Ranger. That's obviously its closest domestic competitor. We built one that we would want to buy that has similar features and options to this. It costs $44,645, delivered as spec'd, out the door, no markups. Now, obviously, that also has a true blue four-wheel drive system, multiple drive mode selectors. It's got Ford's, GOAT all-terrain system, goes over any terrain, drive selector like you'll find on the Bronco if you've seen our video on that. Next up is the Jeep Gladiator. It's arguably one of the more expensive choices in the segment, and it's also not quite a truck given its bed length. I would call it more of a trucklet with some Jeep influence. That said, if you want one of those, you're going to spend $46,825 if you spec it like we did. Again, that's with similar convenience features to this, meaning some off-road features like the Jeep-specific drive modes, as well as tires and a relatively similarly spec'd interior. Next up is, of course, the Toyota Tacoma. Now, a note on the Toyota Tacoma. That car is due for a refresh really any day now. If I knew it was coming, I would tell you. I know it's coming soon. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, because the Toyota Tacoma is far and away the oldest car in this segment. However, it also has a massive cult following for that reason. It's got that nice Toyota durability. They're everywhere. There's huge aftermarket support, and they're massively reliable cars. Now, if you want to go and build one and buy one from a Toyota dealer today, supposing Toyota doesn't take you to church with the markups, you're going to spend $43,584. That, of course, makes the Colorado the cheapest offering in the segment. And that's something to keep in mind when we get to the interior.
Now, let's talk about the interior of the all-new Chevy Colorado. So first and foremost, let's talk about the positives. We have a very nice infotainment screen, very large and responsive. It has all the compatibility you would need from a smartphone perspective, so whether you're Apple or Android, and you also have a nice digital gauge cluster. But the main positive here are all the off-road capabilities that you find in the interior. In the infotainment system, you'll find a bunch of different telemetry data for off-road use, as well as a bunch of different drive modes. I believe there's 4 in total, which is nice, and you can switch it up depending on what terrain or what sort of surface you're driving on. Now that's kind of where the positive end for the interior. This is a very bare bones interior. We only have cloth seats. There's only single zone climate control. There's no dual zone, which is pretty rare for a new vehicle. And there's also really no heated anything, no heated steering wheel, no heated seats, nothing. It's very, very bare bones. It's all plastic. There's really no leather at all. Not even the steering wheel is leather wrapped, which for not that much more money, all of the competitors either offer those as standard or maybe with an optional package. And this actually does have some packages already. It has a convenience package, like the level 2 package. So it's kind of surprising to have a lot of those luxuries omitted when the competition for not that much more money offers those.
Now, one of the biggest areas of improvement for the Colorado is certainly in the rear. I'm not necessarily talking about rear quality rear interior quality, because it is certainly more bare bones than the front. There's 2 climate vents and some window switches, and I'm honestly surprised there's door handles here, and that's it. Even the sliding rear back window is an option. What is important is the amount of legroom that you have. I'm sitting behind Joby's seat right now, and I have a good bit of leg and headroom. If someone's 6 foot plus were sitting in front of me, I'd still have a good bit of room for me, myself, and all of my crap. And of course, I have room in the bed if I am out of space in here.
All right, now driving the Chevy Colorado, the all-new driving experience. We drove one of these actually a couple of years ago, I think like 2 years ago now. The older version, obviously, not this new, freshly redesigned one. And it is a night and day difference. The ride quality, honestly, just the overall comfort actually being in this cabin is a somewhat enjoyable experience now. And I think it's pretty enjoyable in terms of comfort. The seats, I mean, really every seat in any of these, like any competition, is really not that great. This is meant to be an off-roader. It's not meant to be a, luxury vehicle like the Range Rover that we drove in our last video. So go check that out. But yeah, overall, I think the seats are comfortable, provides plenty of support for any off-road driving that you might be doing. And honestly, the suspension's really great. I mean, it's bumpy right now, so it's maybe a bad time to bring this up. But in terms of just driving like in regular city streets or on the highway, I would say it's relatively comfortable. And it's a good place to be. And doesn't make a ton of road noise. You don't really hear a lot of that. At least when we were on the highway driving up here, I didn't really hear a ton. Nothing noticeable as my voice vibrates as we're going through this little kind of trail here. But yeah, overall from an on-road perspective, the on-road performance is really, really great. And like I said before, massively improved over the previous generation of the Chevy Colorado.
All right, we are off-road in the Chevy Colorado TrailBoss. We are bossing trails. Which the thing does. It does boss trails as advertised. The auto-locking rear differential means that you can kind of just leave this in the automatic drive mode. So what I did to get down this trail was I selected the off-road drive mode, which goes through a little four-wheel drive transfer. It's worth noting you have to be parked to do that. I know that some competitors, like Ford and the Bronco, for example, you can switch your drive modes on the fly, even at highway speed, which is super nice. That's definitely something to note if you've maybe forgotten. But the big plus that this and a lot of the other Chevy GM off-road products have now is air down mode. That is a mode within the infotainment screen which will measure the car's tire pressures. And so let's say we're doing some really, really serious, gnarly-ish, right? And I need to air down to get up it. What I'll do is I'll set it at, I don't know, 22 PSI or something like that, 4 PSI, it doesn't matter. You pick a number, and then as you air down, the car will monitor the air pressures and then honk the horn at you once you've hit that point. For example, 22 PSI. It'll give you a little honk. It scares the shit out of you the first time you do it, but it does work, and it's a really nice feature to have for the serious off-roaders. Now, it's also worth noting that there are no compressors on board, so when you want to air back up, you're going to have to go and find a compressor or bring one with you. Luckily, this car does have the generator option, so that you can plug in at the back there if you want to bring a compressor, camp stove, etc., etc. As for the actual off-road performance, it's pretty hard to stop this thing. A lot of off-roading on the snow is about, you know, your traction levels with your tires. These Goodyear Wranglers are really great in the snow, and we have had no issues all day today getting around off-road. Now, visibility is one thing that I think could use a little bit of work. If you have to like look over your shoulder or something to make sure that you're going to clear an obstacle that's sort of pseudo behind you, like a big rock or something, it's a little bit tough. The rear headrests do drop, but it's still kind of hard to see over the shoulder perspective. There's also not a lot of camera availability that you might expect to find in some of the more expensive off-roaders. But that said, for $41,000 as spec or $37,000 MSRP, it's pretty darn hard to beat this thing. It's probably one of the more competitive and competent off-roaders in the segment, and I have exactly no hesitation taking this thing really anywhere. With a single caveat, there's a lot of plastic that comes down off the front nose that creates some worry in my mind. Now, I haven't clipped it today. We've been doing some pretty light off-roading because we don't want to get stuck out here. It's 17 degrees, but that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're taking this off-road. All right, we have some opinions to share.
Yeah. So for my overall conclusion, I think the redesign and the refresh of the Colorado is pretty good for the most part, but honestly, for the money, I'd rather just go out and buy a used TRD Pro. I mean, you could buy a few year old
or even
TRD.
A new TRD off-road with some options on it.
Yeah, there's a lot more, even just like aftermarket support for those, where you can make it way more insane of an off-road car or truck if you want it to. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the other camp. I'm a huge fan of this redesign. I think that they really crushed it. The interior notwithstanding that, and a single note that we forgot to mention, these are not LED headlights and they are not offered on the TrailBoss.
They aren't in the Tacoma either, to be fair.
Yeah, to be fair, you have to pay for them on the Tacoma, but at least you can get them. And the lighting visibility, especially when you're getting dirty off-road like this, is really, really abysmal. So that's one of my biggest gripes. But that said, I can make this interior just a little bit nicer, and I'm willing to put up with a lot of the interior detracting points that this car has in exchange for a lot of the four-wheel drive capability that it has, as you've seen. So that said, it's also worth noting that the Tacoma is going through a refresh, or will be going through a refresh
shortly.
Soon. Yeah. We'll have to see what we think of it when we test that. I'm sure it'll be coming here, and I'm sure we're going to get behind the wheel at some point.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah, one can hope. And maybe that changes our verdict, but for now, it's kind of a split decision. I think that, you know, having the kind of interior is worth it for the off-road capability. You obviously think the opposite.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of the interior. I don't love or hate the design. I think it's fine. Again, I would just rather have a Tacoma, you know, from a reliability standpoint. Just personally, I've driven a lot of Tacomas, so I know how they drive and I like them. So yeah.
Sometimes the obvious choice is the obvious choice for a reason. With that in mind, please do remember to like and subscribe, because that is the obvious choice. It keeps us making videos, it keeps us happy, and it makes sure that we have time to come out here in the freezing cold and film for you. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.